So from 77, you went vegan, 83, 84, you got familiar with the philosophy. How did you end up with being part of direct action groups?
Ah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, it was 79 I went vegan actually. But
Okay.
yeah, what it was back in 77, I read a music magazine, which is what got me initially involved, or at
Mm.
least I was hoping to, you know. This is that false start that I talked about. And it was an article about anti-blood sports groups, and one of which was the Hunt Saboteurs.
Mm.
And they weren't asking for money, they were asking for action. And that really kind of appealed to me, not least because my sister, who's 8 years older than me, also a vegan, but she's now 73. But she used to do a lot of conservation work, you know, and I
Mm.
always remember the mantelpiece with the, you know, the kind of the lion appeal, you know, the elephant appeal, this kind of stuff. And there was also a financial scandal involving the RSPCA. And so I was thinking, how much of your donations are getting through, you know? And so I got a little bit cynical of the corporate side of things.
Yeah.
And here was a group asking for action and not money. And so that appealed for me. And so I got involved with all of that. And then the Northern Animal Liberation League, and then the Animal Liberation Front, and, you know, all the kind of various things, you know, hair coursing, um, grouse shooting, all of the kind of direct action against all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. And would you say that what society reacted with, like the reaction that you had back in the day, is similar to how society reacts nowadays towards veganism and animal rights?
That's actually a complicated question, just because it changed over time, in the sense that in the early days, the press was quite positive. It was almost like animal freedom fighters, that kind of stuff. And particularly if you take the case of the Animal Liberation Front, for example, when they liberated other animals from laboratories, especially if those individuals were, for example, beagles, that was very popular with both the public and the press, you know. What really happened was a movement issue where the homes for these liberated other animals started to dry up. And so the activists turned to their second kind of strategy, which was economic sabotage, they call it, which is a name for meaning damage, that kind of thing. And once they started doing more damage and they had less cuddly pictures to show, then the press kind of changed. So I think it depends on which kind of era we're talking about. And then it also depends on which kind of modern day activism that you're talking about as well, because there are some kind of fluffy types and there are some more militant types. The difference now is that we've got social media commentary on what's going on now, which obviously was completely absent. It was the mass media only in those days. And the weird thing is that we didn't really care much about the public in those days. We didn't see ourselves as engaging the public. It's one of the most fascinating things I try to explain to relatively new vegans, that we were vegan back then, but we didn't campaign for veganism. We campaigned on single issues, and we
Yeah.
very rarely mentioned veganism, even though most of us were vegans as individuals.
Mm.
In fact, even the vegan society back in those days wasn't really seen as part of the animal rights movement. And yet there was a load of animal welfare corporations that were. So I've always described our movement as a little bit messy, you know, philosophical mess, you know,